Medabots is a Pokémon cash-in franchise that never really caught on in North America. It's maybe my favorite monster-raising RPG ever that sadly almost nobody has heard of. And that's a darn shame because the Medabots Game Boy Advance game from 2003 is really good. Medabots, called Medarot in Japan, is a video game, anime, manga, etc. franchise from the late 90s into the 2000s that grew up in the shadow of Pokemon. The anime did well enough in America to air 4 seasons, starting in September 2001. Boy, maybe that's why it didn't take off. Through May 2004. Medabots as a franchise spit out a whole ton of video games, but America missed the first several and ultimately only received 3 disconnected entries. There were 10-ish mainline games, it's fuzzy what counts thanks to re-releases and remakes, and as many spin-offs. We got 2 of the spin-offs in English, but only 1 of the mainline games ever saw a Western release, and it's what we're here to play today. Simply titled Medabots, this monster-raising RPG came out for the Game Boy Advance in March 2003. Yeah, Pokémon Ruby and Sapphire came out 12 days before this did. I think Medabots was just cursed with some terrible timing. Welcome y'all, my name is Mothy, Jimothy for long, and today I'm covering the best non-Pokemon monster-raising Game Boy game. It's called Medabots. There's so much to love about this game. It's got an active time, turn-based hybrid battle system with a ton of strategic depth, hundreds of Medabots to defeat and collect their parts, and they did the whole release 2 versions of the same game thing in a more compelling and dimorphic way than Pokemon ever has. Before this game would get released, Japan saw Medarot games 1 through 5 release on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. Then Medabots GBA came after Medarot 5, and it's actually a remake of Medarot 2. It released with 2 versions, Medabee version and Rokusho version. I'm covering Medabee version here today. Unlike Pokemon, choosing your version of Medabots also chooses your starter Medabot for you. And both versions, while following the same plot and mechanics, play very differently, which I'll cover more later, but in brief, Medabee version has a lot more shooting, and Rokusho is more about melee attacks. I struggled with how to cover this game for the longest time. The plot is too scattered and slapstick to make a compelling narrative. And the strategy, believe it or not, is too deep to cover fully. So I'm actually going to walk a line between those goals, painting broad strokes of the plot while working in notes on the gameplay systems and some of the battle strategies I built my team around. Overall, I guess it's what you call a retrospective and story playthrough. But this video should still leave plenty of meat on the bone for you to go enjoy this game after watching, especially if you feel like playing the Rokusho version. So let's get a run started of Medabots GBA, Medabee version, and I'll show you exactly why I love this forgotten, overshadowed game so much. The game lets me name myself Mothy, except this boy is actual character from the anime Ikki Tenryo, so naming myself just replaces his first name, and I'm awkwardly playing as Mothy Tenryo. The game begins a lot like a traditional Pokemon game. We're a young boy in a small town, friends with an old professor who's an expert in raising and researching monsters, or in this case, Medabots. And the beginning of the game is all just a contrivance to put us in possession of our first Medabot. What is a Medabot? Well, they're little mechs, like 3 to 4 feet tall, created for the purpose of beating the circuits out of each other for the amusement of children. Or doing slave labor. Some of them have jobs. Honestly, their personalities are remarkably human-like, and this whole industry is a minefield of ethical concerns, but you've got to put that aside to enjoy the game. Each Medabot is made up of 6 pieces, which I'm being careful not to call parts, because only 4 of the pieces are parts with a capital P. First, each Medabot has a skeleton called a tin pet, which doesn't have any stats or gain any levels, that's just a container for everything else. Think of tin pets as the number of slots in your party. Then, each Medabot has legs, left arm, right arm, and a head, which are collectively called its parts. These determine what a Medabot can do in battle. They each have their own hit points, and each part, besides legs, have 1 combat move that it can use. The 6th piece of a Medabot is a medal, which is the bit we get to name, and it's what gives the Medabot its identity. The medal governs XP, a bunch of stats, how strong and accurate certain classes of parts are when paired with that medal, and finally the Medabot's ultimate moves called Metaforce. Think of the medal kind of like software and the parts like computer hardware. You could equip the same 4 parts onto different tin pets and get meaningfully different outcomes based on the medal you install in each. The nucleus of what makes this game so fun is how you choose to combine these parts and medals to define your team. Find a cool new head part that shoots bombs? Swap it in. Chunky tank legs that let you withstand more attacks? Yeah, man. Parts can be swapped around freely outside of any battle, and you collect a random part from your opponent every time you win a battle against one, so we'll soon be swimming in options for building out a team that's completely our own. But we start with just our box art Medabot. through a couple of wacky misunderstandings with our mom and a pushy convenience store clerk named Henry, we waste our dinner money on a set of parts for Medabee. Mom is understandably mad at us, but Dad is surprisingly chill and supportive of our new hobby. He even gifts us a Medawatch, which is just an in-universe explanation for the menu UI that lets us customize our team, since our expensive mistake is not much good without one. With that, we're allowed to name our medal. The name of a bot is a weird concept, because the medal is just a tiny invisible thing. I named this medal Governor, but I could ship of Theseus all of his parts out and he would still be named Governor. Hell, what's weirder is that I could stick all of these parts on a second separate tin pet and that one would not be named Governor unless I also moved over the medal. And confusingly, a set of 4 matching parts has a Medabot name that's not the same thing as the medal name. Like, I referred to our bot as Medabee, and our friend Erica, who does an intro battle with us, has one called Brass. These names are basically a shorthand for referring to the set of matching parts, which especially becomes convenient when referring to opponents because they never mix and match parts in this game. Medabee's parts include a right arm with a faster, more accurate, but less damaging rifle shot, a left arm chain gun that's slower and harder hitting, a head that shoots missiles with 100% accuracy, and 2-legged legs that are their fastest on plains or forest terrain. We're thrust into a test battle, nay, row battle, with Erica, our extremely aggressive, dommy photojournalist friend. There are no stakes this time because we'd just lose the game if we lost a part at this stage, but hereafter we get a random part from our opponent from winning a battle, but we give up one of ours if we lose. I'll cover how battles work in a bit. For now, just know that there's a game setting to pick whether you want short, medium, or long battle times. Long battles can get tedious playing them all game long, so I recommend setting battles to medium or short, though the length of battle does affect the meta. Short battles reward team comps that burn brighter faster over ones built for longevity or combos that require setup. After our fight, Erica runs off to the school to photograph a big row battle contest, and we're officially free to begin playing the game. Now, the world of Medabots looks like it's pretty open, but they're actually pretty strict on guiding us to the next destination, like with the random adults blocking every exit except where we need to go. And we'll see later that that's kind of unfair because this game also frequently hides missable high-value treasure after conditioning us to mostly not bother exploring. For now, join Erica at the school and meet the Screws, a gang of bullies who've already won the row battle competition, but they're cocky that they can't lose, so we're allowed to challenge them anyway. We'll fight the Screws a lot, often back to back, so get familiar with their Medabots. The first of them is Sloan with his tanky bot Totalizer. It's extremely slow, but if his laser attacks land, they'll easily one-shot whichever part of ours they hit. There's also Spike with a medium-speed shooting Medabot called Cyan Dog, who's basically just worse than Medabee. And their leader is Samantha, who runs an evasive grappling bot with stop status effects called Peppercat. While we whittle down the Screws, I'm going to sprint through a crash course in battle mechanics. This is going to sound like a lot, but trust me that in practice, battles are intuitive. Okay, row battles are 3-on-3 fights, if you have enough tin pets, and they're timed. You either win by judgment when the time runs out if you've done more damage to the opposing team than they've done to you, or you win automatically by disabling the opponent's lead Medabot. That's the one at the top. You disable a Medabot by fully damaging its head part. The other parts can all be destroyed too, but until the head is gone, a Medabot is still considered in the fight. Great, so just aim at the head, right? Well, you can't always pick your target. When you order your bot to use any melee attack, that attack will be used against whichever opponent is closest to them once that attack goes off, and you can't control which part you hit on your target either. When you use a ranged attack, the UI shows which Medabot will be targeted, but the target is randomly predetermined for each of your parts every time you're giving orders. Sometimes your strongest move will want to target a less important opponent, or you can choose to aim a weaker attack at the leader, and it's a trade-off that you have to weigh. However, each medal has a specific type of part that it prefers to target if it gets the chance. If that part is present on the field, you'll be drawn to target that Medabot, overruling the normal randomness. In all cases, damage tends to get done to the legs first, then the arms, and only the head at last, but sometimes you get lucky and blow up an opponent's head right away. I'm honestly not sure why this sometimes happens. It might be related to having very high accuracy. Each left arm, right arm, and head Medapart only has one move that it can do, so you build your moveset through the parts that you've equipped outside of battle. If a part gets broken, it can't be used for the rest of the battle. That's especially devious if you get a part broken after you've already ordered your bot to use that part for the turn. Now its turn is wasted running to the center and back. Every bot heals fully after every fight though. There's no managing potions or ethers, and money also isn't very useful outside of a few purchasable key items. No, you're allowed to go wild with customization. Bring a berserk melee attack on your left arm, a defensive shield on your right arm to increase your survivability, and a support ability that raises your team's accuracy on your head part. That would be valid. But if your one attacking arm got targeted first, you'd be stuck using support abilities for the rest of the battle while your opponent is free to keep wearing you down. So there can be value in building redundancy. If you equip a similar attack on both arms and your head, you'll definitely be able to advance your battle state even after losing a part or two. It comes down to your philosophy and whether the rest of your team can cover any weaknesses you may expose on one bot. You issue orders for your bot at the start of battle and also anytime that it reaches home again. After giving orders, your bot runs to the center where it executes those orders, then returns home to get new orders and repeat. Every part takes a different amount of time to reach the center and execute that move, which is called the charge phase, and a different amount of time to return home after, which is called the radiation phase. So the concept of speed in this game is really split in two halves. Mechanically, I think separating charge and radiation speeds is a fascinating design. Totalizer's huge laser attacks, for example, take a while to charge, which gives us a chance to try and break his arms before the attack ever happens. But his radiation speeds are higher, so he can return home quick and choose his next attack. By contrast, defensive abilities usually have a very fast charge time to get them enacted, and then a slower radiation phase because you want the defense to last a while. Head parts cheat the timing though. Head parts don't list a stat for charge or radiation speed because head parts all act with the same very high charge and radiation speed. So you may be tempted to run a head part with a powerful attack on it, which, yes, that's a smart strategy. But head parts are the only part with a limited use count per battle, and the stronger moves are balanced out with lower usages. The downside that of course can be mitigated using shorter battles. You have to be careful with when you order certain attacks too. All ranged attacks, be they laser attacks, bullets, bombs, or gravity, are classified as either shoot or aim shot. Basically think quick versus heavy attacks. Shoot moves tend to be faster but with lower damage. Aim shot moves are the inverse. But after you use an aim shot move, your evasion is reduced drastically to the point you're almost guaranteed to be critically hit if you're caught by an opponent's attack during the radiation phase. Melee attacks have the same breakdown, but the light moves are called grapple and the heavy ones are called berserk. So why risk a berserk sword attack when you could just use two faster grapple strike attacks in the same period and avoid the evasion debuff? Well, aim shot and berserk moves, the heavy ones, tend to have chain damage, meaning that if they do more than enough damage to destroy the part they targeted, the damage will spill over to the next part, potentially more than once. Pulling off one big chain damage laser aim shot can do the work of 6 little rifle shots. Just don't miss. Accuracy, called rate of success or ROS in this game, affects more than just whether you hit or not. It also affects your chances to crit, and a portion of your ROS converts into extra damage. Some attacks, like most gravity moves, read pretty bad on paper with low damage values, but thanks to their massive ROS, they can actually be decent. And there are a fair amount of highly evasive enemies in this game who task you to either buff your accuracy, use innately high ROS moves, or find non-attack ways to damage them, such as traps or metaphors. And yeah, there are many more types of parts than just attack parts. You can set a grapple or shoot trap that will heavily damage the next opponent who tries to use a respective attack. Some parts heal allies, defend them from attacks, debuff enemies, inflict status, and mess with the timing and position of other bots on the field. There are even a handful of parts that do nothing except cancel out certain other categories of attack just by having them equipped. Combine that with a part that lightning rods attacks to you, that's a strong defense against certain foes. What's neat is that the rated power on a part still matters for non-attacks. Heals heal more, traps will stick around longer, status effects even last longer based on the power of the part that applies them. And now we can talk about legs. The moves you order all have a charge and radiation speed, but that's further amplified by your legs. But there's actually much more to leg parts than just picking the highest propulsion value, i.e. speed modifier. For one, different formats of legs are greatly affected by the battle terrain. Wheels are their best indoors, for example, and spider legs do their best on rocks. You're rewarded for changing around leg parts for different areas throughout the game. Floating legs and tank legs are unique because they ignore terrain if you can't be bothered, but they have lower speeds overall. There's also flying and marine type legs, which are extra fast in certain terrains, but open up your bot to taking massive damage from anti-air or anti-sea attacks, which are present on sporadic enemies throughout the game, so they're a risk to use. All leg parts also are rated for proximity and remoteness stats, which greatly affect the ROS and power of your melee and ranged abilities respectively. If it feels like your melee attacks aren't doing the damage they should, make make sure your leg parts aren't implicitly designed to go with ranged attacks. And for berserk melee attacks specifically, your leg's propulsion value gives an extra bonus to the strength of your attack. That's a little bonus hidden knowledge for you there. You'll also want to consider hit points. Legs can be a great damage sponge because they often get targeted first by opposing attacks. Tanky legs can take hits and shrug off attacks. Or do you want flimsy or faster legs that help you try to break their arms before they can even act? Losing your leg parts in battle deprives you of the stat bonuses they were providing for your Medabot. And that is like 2/3 of battle mechanics in Medabots. It's a shockingly deep combat system that gets fascinating as we begin to unlock more parts, and especially more tin pets, and I think it makes the battles at the core of gameplay a fair bit more fun than Pokemon's ever have been. Warm take, I guess. Let's get back to the plot. Erica got some good photos of our fights with the screws, but Samantha does not want to credit our win, so she has all 3 screws attack us at once. But our mysterious Medabot governor pulls a cutscene and blasts them all back with a mysterious power. That power is our Medaforce, and Governor is apparently a cutting-edge metal who just figured it out before the others. Basically, in battle, you build Medaforce when you get attacked, or you can use, quote-unquote, your leg parts to charge half of your Medaforce gauge. Once it's full, you can take your turn to use a Medaforce ability, and each metal unlocks a new Medaforce ability at levels 10, 30, and 50. Well, we're free to explore the school now, and Erica encourages us to seek out battles. There are 3 scripted opponents around the school. One is an administrator with 2 Tankar bots, which is still tough while we only have the 1 Medabot, but his chain gun arm is an interesting option for us to swap in as an upgrade. This game has random battles too. We can run into girls with Churly Bear, which is a slow but bulky gravity attacker, boys with Kintaro, a weak but fast attacking grappler, and masterless crosser dogs who are very similar to Spike's Cyan dog. I won't call out all of the wandering encounters for the rest of the game unless they've got some transformative parts for the team. But generally the gameplay loop is when a new area opens up, you'll want to spend some time wandering the area, checking out the new encounters, and farm any parts from them that you want for your team. While I go around the school filling out my collection, let's talk about the differences between Medabee and Rokusho versions of this game. For one, there are a large handful of exclusive Medabots in each game, meaning there are dozens of unavailable parts in each game, which shapes your build options quite a lot. But more important than the parts, there are different metals in each game. So far, what we know about metals is that we can give them a name, they determine your preferred target sometimes, and they define your Medaforce abilities. Each metal also has one kind of part that it specifically boosts the rate of success and therefore the effective power of. There's a gravity metal, for example, and a laser metal. Governor is kind of a basic bitch shoot type metal that just covers things like chain gun and rifle. The boost from having compatibility between your parts and your metal is significant, so it's another reason you might want to equip redundant parts on the same bot, since those parts won't be nearly as good paired with any other metal. You can get several of the metals in both games. I think my final count for Medabee version was 18 of the 30, but the metals that are exclusive matter a great deal, since Medabee version has all of the ranged attacking metals, and Rokusho version has all of the melee attacking metals. Medabee gets metals that support guns, and gravity, and lasers, and napalm, but Rokusho gets metals that support sword attacks, and most of the good status effects. This means battles fundamentally play differently for each version. Rokusho version teams will generally do more and faster attacks, but the faster leg parts they run will be less sturdy, and they may have more trouble with accuracy. They'll gain a lot more from having a teammate who's focused on defense or buffs. Medabee players, us, instead have more attacks that inflict big damage in one shot, as well as high accuracy moves to handle evasive opponents, but we will struggle more with speed, and so we'll gain a lot more from a teammate who can speed up allies or interfere with turn order for opponents. You can trade metals and parts between versions to complete your collection, but on a first playthrough, the different metals and parts available will cause your team to play very different in one version versus the other. It's as though Pokemon Ruby version locked you into having Torchic, and Sapphire locked you into using Mudkip, and then the wild catchable Pokemon in each area only had like 50% overlap. Breaking up the metals gives excellent replayability, and it's a really good reason to buy both versions of the same game. Okay, plot. If we exit the school, we bump into Karen, which I guess would be pronounced Karen, but you'll have to speak to my manager about it. She's a girl from the neighboring private school come here to search for her boyfriend called Koji. Karen is one of 2 romanceable girls in this game. That's right, Medabots has romance quest chains that come with rewards. But we're gonna go with Erica because that's a little more canonical to the anime. So is playing the Medabee version, honestly. Also, take this chance to visit Miss Nai in her lab, who is the granddaughter, or maybe niece? I think she's called both. Granddaughter of the old Medabots Dr. Aki. She holds 6 medals in her lab, and if we consistently visit her throughout the game, she'll gradually allow us to choose them all one by one. but it's very easy to miss some if we don't constantly check in with her. Among her 6 options, at the beginning of the game, the most interesting to me are her anti-sea and anti-air medals because we can get parts pretty early that benefit from those. I grabbed the bat medal, the anti-air one, naming it Twilight, but we still only possess the one tin pet for the moment, so we can still only bring Governor into battles with us. Back in school now, a child with long black hair is super angry, and he's row-battling everyone he sees, trying to find a hoodlum who's been using their Medabot to tickle girls, and he ropes us into combat. This fight is pretty tough, so it's worth saving first. His bot, Sumilodon, sets nasty shot traps with his head part that heavily punish Governor because we only know how to shoot. To win, I had to achieve a slight edge by tanking traps to quickly destroy his arm parts so that all he could do was keep relaying traps, then just run out the clock running no ops and win by judgment. Sumilodon's trap-laying head part is one of the best trap options all game, so I did save scum until I got this as my prize. You'll see it equipped on my team a lot of the time going forward because traps are frankly overtuned in Medabots GBA thanks to simple math that they trigger more than once for only taking one action to set up. And winning this fight got Governor to level 10, unlocking his first Metaforce ability for use in combat. It's just a decently strong attack, which has 100% accuracy and gets around traps and defensive abilities, so it's a great tool for various situations where normal attacks would be unprofitable. Frankly, grinding to level 10 before this fight would have made it a lot easier thanks to his traps. It turns out that angry boy is Koji, Karen's boyfriend, and he's mad because the tickler had apparently victimized Karen. Then Erica diffuses the situation, and we leave together to devise a plan to catch this so-called tickler. Erica's genius plan is to stick us in a skirt. We're surprised she even owns one, and use us as bait. So yeah, Medabots is actually cross-dressing simulator, kind of. The game derives a ton of humor from finding reasons to stick our character in girly clothing. It'll happen like 4 more times. It is funny watching us get super flustered, but we're a good boy who dresses up when mommy says to without much protest. Long story short, we make it to the abandoned Medaparts factory in town, and it turns out the Rubberobo gang is behind the ticklings. Well, one of their low-ranking grunts anyway. The Rubberobos are the Team Rocket of Medabots world, a blundering gang of bad guys with questionable uniforms and cartoonish stupidity. We're also introduced to the Select Corps once we win. They're the cops of this universe, though they're pretty corrupt and get off on claiming credit for the various crimes that we solve for them. Before we step outside, make sure to loot. There's a missable medal in one of the dozens of boxes here. The others are all empty and don't give us a reason to think that there would be an important loot in one of them. And we can't re-enter this place once we leave. Medabots is pretty mean about missable loot, especially with regards to medals. This is the Tortoise medal, which boosts optic or laser attacks, which tend to be very high-powered but slow to charge, not very accurate, and they lack chain damage. I named it Fratello, and it ended up being one of my core medals for most of the game because I do love optic attacks. And with the Rubberobo tickler arrested, Chapter 1 of the game comes to a close. Now, the game does not define these chapters, but it makes sense to me to delineate the game in chapters because most of the game falls into a steady formula. We enter a new area, fight a bunch of new Medabots and gather parts, solve some problem caused by the Rubberobo gang, and go home, often getting a new medal from Miss Nye in between. And the structure of these chapters is related to why I decided against going too deep on the plot description. Each chapter is just a little vignette, a little anime episode, and I'll be honest that most of them feel low stakes, and they also don't fit too well together. Plot is not a strong point of Medabots. For Chapter 2, the kids at school have been getting their Medaparts stolen by some ghost, allegedly, up on Mount Odoro, which is otherwise a nice picnic spot. Before heading there, Mom packs us a picnic lunch, and Dad gifts us a second tin pet. It's this point in the game, now that we've collected a second tin pet, when the game really clicks, because all of a sudden we have choices to make about team comp. I don't have great parts for Fratello yet, but I slapped some mismatched junk on him to at least start getting some combat experience while we hunt for good optic parts. Then, head north of screen from Riverview City to begin Chapter 2, the Ghost Hunt on Mount Odoro. We're teamed up with Erica, but Karen and Koji are also trying to stop the ghost, as are the Screws gang from school, and everyone sees it as a competition with each other. There are a bunch of new Medabots in wandering encounters up here with dozens of new parts to acquire. There are close to 150 Medabots in the game, so 4 times as many parts to collect, and we can only get about 3/4 of these parts on one playthrough of Medabee version, even with perfect luck and no duplicates on boss drops. Still, I try to collect everything I can because you never know when you'll acquire a medal later that suddenly turns on a whole new strategy if you have the parts to support it. One bot I made sure to get the parts for here are these Floros who attack in pairs. Their head has a strong optic attack with 2 charges apiece, and their arms don't attack, so if you can survive the opening fusillade, you're good. But I actually love their arm parts too, which do nothing innately, except they speed up your charge and radiation speeds of other actions just by having them equipped. These Floro arms trade versatility for speed, which can mean a great deal on a slower Medabee version shooting heavy team. Reach one small loot island where a ninja pops out of a chest with no effect. But if we somehow know to search that open chest again, we collect the highly missable, because we can only visit this island once, Jellyfish Medal, another Medabee version exclusive that boosts bomb and napalm parts. Missing this one would be a travesty because some of my favorite parts in the game are bomb attacks. Now, I mentioned Karen as a romance option. To get the Erica romance outcome we desire, we have to never speak to Karen unless the game forces us to. If she's with Koji, we can talk to Koji, but otherwise consider Karen poison. We want to be the best boy for Erica alone. If we head southwest on Mount Odoro, there's an optional area full of hermits who each battle with a dragonfly and a Noctobat, 2 Medabots with air legs. We can smash these bots for easy victories if we bring an anti-air part into the battle, and conveniently, the Noctobats themselves have anti-air heads and arms if we don't have any parts yet. I'm not over-exaggerating the payoff either. Hitting a flying-legged Medabot with an anti-air attack causes about 10 times the listed damage with chain effect, and will often one-shot the entire Medabot. We also run into a second ninja for coming this way, who gives us the Bear Medal, which boosts gravity moves. Gravity moves are ranged attacks that are slower to charge and not great damage, but they have very high accuracy. I named mine Diane because I was watching Twin Peaks, but I didn't utilize it much because gravity feels a little bit redundant with the space that bomb attacks occupy, in my opinion. Note, by the way, that 4 of the first 5 medals, everything except the Bat Medal that we got from Miss Nye, is a version exclusive. I love how they front-load some of the most transformative exclusive medals to make each version feel different even from the start of the game. Skipping some steps, we fell in the river and woke up in a pink kimono, our second pretty girl outfit. We've been rescued from the river and confused by a girl by this nice old woman, Canny, who is rumored by the school children to be a witch. For completely no reason, like she's not living in a gingerbread house or doing rituals. We also learned from Canny that the ghost rumor is fabricated, though something has been stealing the kids' Metaparts. Canny's granddaughter Natsuko used to be close friends with a Medabot named Yanagi, who moved into the caves and started decaying once Natsuko moved to the big city. It seems like Yanagi has been behaving strangely, and that is our ghost. After driving away some rubberobos for Canny, she gifts us our 3rd tin pet and gives us a choice between male and female. Oh, yeah, tin pets and the parts they can equip are all gendered. Both of our tin pets so far have been male. That's not a thing we get to choose. And the majority of all parts are male, so it is a balanced way to start the game. But now we can grab a female tin pet if we want. We only get to hold 9 tin pets total, and the split ends up being either 6-3 or 5-4 based on this choice. Choosing a female tin pet now does open up some strategic options earlier, because our next female tin pet is not even the next one we get, but the one after that. Specifically, a female tin pet opens up healing and regenerative strategies, many shot trap parts, which could be very helpful if we didn't win Sumilidon's head, anti-C parts, which only have one bad option in the male gender for a long time, and some special strong transforming parts we can win from Miss Nye in a bit. But like I said, the majority of parts are male, plus the game has a couple of vehicles later that you can think of like HM slaves that waste a male tin pet slot, so I did go with a 3rd male tin pet for now. I throw together Jones, our bomb affinity Medabot. His first Metaforce ability is very interesting. It's called Bomb Form, which does no damage. The description says it turns all of his parts into bomb parts. What that really means is that it grants all of his parts the innate bonus that bomb-type parts always enjoy. That's 100% accuracy and chain damage. Give that accuracy and chaining damage to some optic attacks though. Baby, you've got a stew going.
Baby, you got a stew going.
Once you've collected most of the parts you want from one area, random battles can get annoying because grinding for levels plays second fiddle to having a smart strategy and the right parts equipped. Well, we can skip random battles by spending a rubberobo medal, which is something we've been earning one of every time we defeat a rubberobo opponent. It's an interesting system for helping you cherry pick which fights you bother with. It means that I also never choose to skip random battles against rubberobo opponents, because spending 1 medal to skip that battle plus missing out on the one we'd win from the fight is kind of like blowing 2 medals. Well, we've moved into the caves now called Odoro Marsh, looking for the decrepit Yanagi to get it to stop haunting children. The screws have also progressed this far, and they forced several battles with us because they want to defeat the ghost first and keep those children's Medaparts for themselves. This section is the first point in the game where we get gear checked. Several rocks block the tunnel, and they can only be cleared if we have one specific Medapart equipped on one of our tin pets. That may sound like a big ask, except in every case that the game asks for a specific part, that part is given off in a nearby chest or sold in a shop. And if you're not perceptive enough to find those chests for some reason, I think the part is also usually dropped by a random encounter Medabot in the same area. But the moral of the story is, don't go selling your last copy of any part to the store because you never know. After a few screens of caves and screw fights, we get to meet Yanagi, the decrepit parts-stealing ghost. Yes, it admits to scaring kids for their parts, but we learn that it's the Rubberobo gang who tricked Yanagi into behaving this way. Of course it was. That clarity means we actually have to intervene and protect Yanagi when the hot-headed Koji shows up to hurt it. He's got a second Medabot now that I highly desire. Rockflower is able to give allies a speed buff, which difference is more noticeable the slower you originally were. And yet, because Koji battles are limited throughout the game, and I prefer finishing out a set before going for more parts, I took another Similodon part instead of Rockflower. After Koji, it's straight into fighting the actual Rubberobos who are behind Yanagi's confused behavior. This game loves sticking multiple event or boss battles back to back with no saving in between, which is a curious design pattern that I'm not sure if I like or dislike. No individual fight in the game is particularly tough because a savvy player really can outbuild any challenge from early on, so chaining fights like this adds back a little bit of difficulty, but it also makes it hard to fish for specific parts if there's one you want from each fight in a series. This fight introduced our first elite named Rubberobo, Squid Guts, and his fight is one of the tougher fights in the game. His leader is a hugely bulky dash button, protecting a magic clown while it bombs us again and again. Shot traps are strong here to hurt the clown through defense, but this one is a grind. We get the Spider Medal for winning, which is highly compatible with trap parts. I'd say this is one of the strongest medals objectively. I named mine Lemmy, and I use it a fair bit, but I'm not a fan of any of its meta forces. Then, the Phantom Renegade swoops in to help clean things up. He's a stylish, Spiceroni-obsessed superhero and a strong metafighter who's very obviously just the C-store employee Henry, but the game gets some cheap laughs from the dramatic irony of our character having no clue about that. He grabs Yanagi to go get repaired by Dr. Aki, leaving us to return the stolen Medaparts. But before we can return those parts to the community, the Select Corps once again show up and steal credit for our crime fighting. And it turns out the cave exit is just yards away from their mountain headquarters. They could have busted this case at any point if they had a mind to. You can certainly convince me that the Select Corps are actively criminal and conspiring with the Rubberobos, but that's never truly implied in the game. They just seem incompetent and self-serving. Well, Chapter 2 ends with our Valor stolen again, and we return to town. Visiting Miss Nye at this point scores another medal from her collection. I chose the Anti-Sea Kappa medal since I know some aquatic opponents are coming up and named it Squirtle. Chapter 3 takes place on Medabot Island, a large amusement park made up of many screens and a huge influx of new parts to collect. But all is not well on Medabot Island. After their setbacks at our hands, the Rubberobo gang has decided to recruit children, and they're using the park to abduct and induct kids. That explains why all the children in town, us included, have just received free passes to Medabot Island in the mail. Mom and Dad are too busy to take us, but Erica's dad is busy too, so we're invited along with Erica and her mother on condition we act as Erica's bodyguard for the day. I mean, she could scare away attackers way easier than we could, so they're merely patronizing me, but sure, bodyguard it is. Upon arrival, we're greeted by obvious evil guy Dr. Armand, but he's all smiles and he's our ally for now. We're told about a big row battle tournament taking place, which isn't really relevant to the Rubberobo plot, but it is required to advance the game, so our first stop is entering this tournament. I've already made it pretty clear that battles are the biggest strength of this game, and Medabots seems to know that too, so I'm happy that they weave in some content that's just about doing battles. Every round of the tournament takes place on indoor terrain, so equipping wheel leg parts will give you a big advantage here. In the later rounds of the tournament, we even learn that Medabots canonically takes place in our same planet Earth because we face highly stereotyped opponents from Siberia, Italy, Mexico, and a Native American. The Italian girl Shandy, who speaks in Mario-ese, is worth calling out. She runs 2 King Pharaohs with a very appealing head part. It shoots bombs with a much higher power than any other part we've seen before, but it only has 2 uses. Now, earlier I explained how the bomb form metaforce was excellent for superpowering optic attacks. Well, our optic medal has an analogous metaforce called optic form, which turns all of our parts to optic parts, i.e. doubles their power. Using Optic Form, then some King Pharaoh Head Napalm, even only with 2 charges, is a pretty dirty combo. So I had lasers pretending to be bombs, and now I'll have bombs pretending to be lasers. Good stuff. The tournament champion is Koji, whom I guess you could consider our rival for this game, even though Erica and the Screws all kind of have that honor as well. He's still running Sumilidon, but he now has a second rock flower supporting it. For winning the entire competition, we get the Mermaid Medal, which boosts heal-type parts. Those mostly show up on female Medabot parts, so I'm just now starting to feel the sting of picking a male tin pet from Canny. Aside from that tournament, the main focus of Chapter 3 is the Witch's Castle attraction. This actually seems kind of fun IRL. It's a large, multi-floor, self-contained role-playing adventure hosted by Milky the Witch. We're here to defeat the Dark Master, but first we travel through the Lost Forest to the dream world of Milky Land, where there's no homework. And we're dressed up not in girls' clothes for once, but a shining gold suit of armor. Now, don't go too fast here. There are new parts to collect inside the castle, including one I make extensive use of for the remainder of the game. We've seen Koji's Rockflower bots already, who grant a speed buff to an ally. This pink rabbit also manipulates time, but instead of granting a lasting buff, these parts instantly zip an ally to the center or back home if it's in radiation. Playing with this time manipulation lets you spam powerful, really slow moves on your other bots as long as you have these rabbit parts to cheat them extra turns. In fact, this strategy will pretty much carry a team through the end game, and the only reason you'll see me run different strategies is either to have fun trying new parts or to metagame against certain bosses. They introduce a minigame during the Witch's Castle that makes us road race our team of Medabots against 2 opponents. Matching your leg parts to the terrain makes a huge difference here, but this is also a game of button mashing to cheer your team on. It's not very fun. After completing the little witch adventure, at the end of the castle is a boss fight against the Dark Master himself, who, I'm not sure what kind of being this is. This thing looks like an actual ghost, but it seems to act like a normal human metafighter, and his team is devious. His lead bot just jacks off, increasing its own evasion the whole fight to prevent you from winning off an early leader kill, while the other 2 bots use extremely damaging destroy actions that wipe 1 or more parts clean out, but only if they can catch you during the radiation phase, so this one's all about timing. Destroy parts definitely seem like a high ceiling strategy worth building a team around, but I think there's a little more support for that in the Rokusho version. Go to leave the castle after this, and we learn Karen entered earlier with a group and never came back out. So we queue up again on a rescue mission and slip away from the group for a peek behind the curtains of the Witch's Castle. I really enjoy this segment. Checking out the abandoned funhouse feels backroomsy, and I wish this part was longer. Our search culminates in a fight against the rubberobos to rescue some imprisoned kids, and it turns out Karen actually wasn't even among them. She just got lost. For finding her, she gives us our 4th tin pet, male again, which I build into a dedicated time buffing support bot. Later, I give this guy Sumilidon's Berserk arm that I'll actually pivot to using halfway through a fight once he's buffed the team. Then, head home. Chapter 3 is concluded. The next day, Dr. Aki gives us our next lead. Someone is using Medabots for evil. Yeah, super generically. That's taking place over in the big city to the east, Medaropolis. Visit Miss Nye while we're here though, and we don't get a medal this time, but we can get a whole set of experimental meta parts after we beat her in a battle. All of her parts basically work like Metronome from Pokémon. They pick a random part to behave as each time they're used. But they're subdivided into using a certain style of move. She has 1 bot who uses support parts, 1 who attacks, and 1 who defends. This fight is actually pretty dangerous, but Anti-C is a hack you can use to take out her leader quickly, and she lets us claim a set of 1 of the bots we faced as a prize. Sadly, these are all female parts, so we have to wait to use them. These sets are one of the better reasons to claim that female tin pet from Canny, because even though they use random moves, they act with good speed, so rolling a strong move off of one of these transform parts feels like a bargain. Now, chapters 4 and 5 of Medabots are definitely the highlight of the game. They both take place in Medaropolis for a gigantic mystery investigation that will have us running around the city for clues, dealing with intrigue, betrayal, enemies to friends, a hostage situation, maybe a little romance, and an evil den of ants. We begin chapter 4 when we head east to Medaropolis to look for this generic evildoer that Dr. Aki warned of. For our first stop, visit the Meta Shop in the northwest quadrant of the city. On the second floor here are the Metalink battle stations, which sound like some kind of link cable multiplayer thing, but it's actually just an offline series of 24 battles against various opponents from throughout the game. Only a couple of these battles unlock at a time after we pass certain plot gates, so you'll want to revisit Metalink often after any plot advancements. There are a lot of opponents we only get to row battle one time in the main story, but we'll get a second opportunity to fight a lot of them thanks to Metalink. Our very first opponent here is awkwardly Miss Nye again, and after beating her here, she tells us to come back to the lab to claim a third one of her medals. I've been big on time manipulation, so I grabbed the rabbit medal this time, named it Halpert, and stuck it in my time bot to improve his compatibility with the moves he was using anyway. Now, the plot for Chapter 4 is truly all over the place, but it centers as usual around the Rubberobo gang. Apparently, there's a clever Rubberobo now, in contrast, I guess, to all the stupid ones so far, causing undisclosed mayhem at the Rosewood Private Academy in the northeast corner of the city. That's where Koji and Karen go to school, so we get to team up with them and actually turn the corner now from being rivals more to friendship. Most of the kids at Rosewood are stuck-up D-bags, and it's Kafka-esque trying to find any leads at the school. There's an ill-adjusted boy trying to sell private photos of Karen for $1, but taking one would break our Erica romance, so make sure to decline. And you can make things really awkward in the bathroom. One especially haughty student is called Hachiro, and he kicks off a boss battle for even having the audacity as a poor kid to speak to him. His leader is Stingeray, an optic user who's actually pretty fast for one of those, and he's protected by two beefy defenders, making this fight a race to blow through his bulk and stop his lasers before they take our whole team down. Then, stymied for now of any progress inside Rosewood, Erica forwards us to the Medabots Corporation down in the southeast quadrant of the city. There's actually some on-point humor here from the jaded corporate slaves for any adults playing this children's game. Now, we could keep hunting for the clever Rubberobo, or we could acquire Car. There's one blonde employee at Medabots Corp who stands out from the rest. This is Kirara, who respects our passion for Medabots and slips us a visitor badge for checking out their experimental Medabot room. Inside that room is one scientist who appears like all the others, but he's a secret well-wisher, our inside man. This well-wisher gives us a whole set of metaparts and a key item, the Mini S wheel, that actually lets us turn one of our male tin pets into a car and ride it around. This does occupy your tin pet slot, but the parts are technically functional anti-air parts, so I stick them together with my bat metal and occasionally bring this guy into battle as air opponents come up for the rest of the game. The car is actually a big quality of life improvement, and it comes at the perfect time since Medaropolis is so large. It does not increase our move speed, but it does prevent random battles, and it functions in a surprising breadth of circumstances that don't feel car appropriate, like caves and sewers, so don't hesitate to try calling the car anytime you wish to skip battles. So, we did all that work earlier to spare the children from rubberobo recruitment at Medabots Island, but I guess they still managed a handful of child soldiers before we got there. Cause we have to defeat this one child rubberobo to get our fourth new outfit, our own rubberobo uniform. We try it on, which of course immediately backfires when the Select Corps show up at exactly the wrong moment, but who is this? Come to our rescue. It's the Phantom Lady? Yeah, this blonde woman is very obviously Kurara, whom we just met at Medabots Corporation. She's actually Henry's girlfriend, and she's trying to get him to study for college instead of row battle so much. They're sweet. She drives off the cops for us, and we're free to resume our hunt for the clever rubberobo. But before moving on from this point, we have to execute some ridiculously convoluted steps to ultimately succeed in our Erica romance. Head not to the Meta Shop, but to the Meta Mall, a totally different building, and go upstairs. Among 11 shelves of junk is one tile where we can find a telephoto camera lens. Buy that for $20, but that's not the end of it. We also have to mail it to her through the clerk on the first floor, and the game does not help us find that. Then with our gift mailed, Erica romance is back on track, and we're clear to resume the story. Join Erica in doing some more Metalink battles to hunt for the clever Rubberobo online, and the creepy Dr. Armand invites us to hop in and battle him. He's got basically upgraded versions of the starter Medabots from each game, doing triple offense. Traps are a good help here because they can jam up 2 of the 3 opponents. By the way, these Metalink battles all take place on a terrain called Cybar, which is really just a bad translation of cyber because we're fighting inside a computer. No single leg type is advantaged here, so basically use any legs besides float because those only do okay in all fields, and you can at least justify tank legs with their hit points. Just after we beat Dr. Armand, the Rubberobos attack this shop and steal a unique Medabot from the store's display. Everybody is frankly stunned that the Rubberobos could coordinate a real heist like this without screwing it up. It must be thanks to that dang clever Rubberobo. Armand is impressed with our resolve to fight evil and gives us a Knight medal, good at defend actions. For many of the medals that are common to both versions of this game, they even change when you receive them in each game, and I think Knight is one that comes in both, but it's a little sooner in Rokusho version. Witnesses of the crime direct us back to Rosewood Academy, but the screws get in our way because they want to crack the case themselves. They've brought out their secret fourth member to beat us, a sickly boy called the Baron, who runs a triad of Medabots who do nothing but counterattack. Counters can be countered with parts that disable defend actions or with Metaforce, but because I didn't bring it to this fight anybody with a damaging Metaforce, pretty much all I could do was try and blitz down a part or two before they all set up counterattacks and wait out the rest of the battle, winning on judgment. At Rosewood now, it becomes clear that the asshole Hachiro is the clever rubberobo. Karen reveals that she and Koji actually used to be friends with Hachiro. She's not sure why he's acting this way and actually expresses concern rather than anger. This is the second time this game that has appeared to be a villain who was merely misunderstood. Medabots has a couple of these nice moments in this game that teach us compassion. I like it. Well, yada yada, there's a full-blown rubberobo hostage situation going on. We bust into the school alongside Koji to save our respective girls. I think if we were on the Karen romance path here, rescuing her and forcing Koji to get Erika at this point is what really sets their breakup in motion and opens the door for us. In the school, we have to fight Squid Guts again, Hachiro again, and a new rubberobo boss called Sea Slug, who convinced Hachiro that doing crime would make him popular. Sea Slug is not a tough fight. His leader can disable apart from our bots, but his supporting attackers aren't very strong, and he doesn't run any traps or defensive abilities. Then we do have to kick Hachiro's butt one more time in his own house after all this to save him from demise in order to finally reach a wholesome moment when he, we, and Koji all agree to be friends. So crime really did make Hachiro friends after all. Stopping him, the clever rubberobo, concludes Chapter 4. We'll be back to Medaropolis again soon, but we get a break with some content back home in between, which is a good pacing choice from the game, so we're not just stuck in this city for an eternity. It's now that Erika finally pieces together with her journalism that we've been the hero behind the scenes for most of the conflicts so far. It was legit kind of maddening having all of our victories be edged and taken away from us, so it's nice to start actually feeling appreciated for our heroics. Head to the lab to catch Dr. Aki and the Phantom Renegade chatting casually. Really, it's an open secret to everyone except us that Dr. Aki and the Renegade are watching us and grooming us as a child hero meta fighter. Why they do this is not really made clear. Maybe they're just encouraging vigilante justice because they know the police aren't very helpful in this world. We can also battle Miss Nai again for a second set of her experimental meta parts. The lack of a female tin pet is really becoming felt, but we do get one in the coming segment at least. Speaking of, return to Medaropolis for Chapter 5. It sounds like many people have gone missing from in front of the train station. Don't forget to keep up with Metalink battles though. Dr. Aki himself will battle us in the next batch using a triad of weird white aliens with transforming parts like Miss Nai's. These aliens are one of 2 Medabots that we only see once in a playthrough, meaning it actually takes 4 playthroughs if you want to collect every single part in the game thanks to Dr. Aki here, and one other bot that there's a singleton of in the post-game. Okay, the disappearances. What can we find outside the train station? It's just a bunch of romantic couples, a statue of a dog named Bonaparte, and the totally friendly good guy, Dr. Armand. After doing some back and forth running to the police station, we're allowed to fight Armand again, who reveals that he's been testing us as a prospective member of the Rubberobo gang once we win. I love our reaction to this. We were just looking for Erika, but a whole situation has now found us. That Bonaparte statue disguises stairs down to the sewers where we get to collecting new parts. Interesting opponents here are these red and green ants who use the trap mechanic in a new way for offense. The green ants first use a move to line up an attack, and the red ants activate this teamwork attack to do massive chaining damage. But nothing would stop us from throwing both red and green parts on one tin pet. It would just take 2 turns to run the combo. There's an entire Rubberobo base beyond the sewer, but fortunately we have one of their outfits for sneaking in. We find Squid Guts leading a gaggle of Robo Kids out to do crime, except as soon as they all get cornered, he abandons them to get arrested and saves himself. I'm on his side here. Arrest those kids. Should have stayed in school. Alas, we, the perpetual hero, promise the Phantom Renegade we will see the kids to safety in the Rosewood Academy to spare them from jail. Bring those kids to school, where one kid gives us a key to let us even farther down in the sewers, which is a weird thing for a rich kid to possess. So, head back to the sewers, where we infiltrate the cabinet of rubberobo leadership, ending in a sea slug battle, then flee through a secret tunnel leading us to a whole colony full of those red and green ant Medabots. These ants are the ultimate source of the disappearances in Medaropolis. People have been getting kidnapped, then treated admittedly quite well, while they are held captive to be fed to the ant queen. We're being treated well too, because in a chest down here is finally a female tin pet and our 5th overall. I've been pretty comfortable with my team comp, so this edition doesn't shake up my strategy, but it does let me finally outfit a non-terrible anti-sea user for when those opponents show up. I'm not sure what they meant by getting fed to the Ant Queen, because the Ant Queen turns out to be fake. It's just a big stone tablet with a rubberobo behind it giving orders, Wizard of Oz style. With the fake revealed, the ant bots feel purposeless, until we realize they can stay very busy like they want if they go home with the kidnapped children as companions. Medabots GBA out here being wholesome again. And you could call that the first half of the game done. The first half has been pretty scattered plot-wise, but as we head down this tunnel behind the fake Ant Queen, an actual, more medium-stakes plot emerges that will take us through the second half of the game. Those ants weren't just down here tunneling for fun. They had been tasked by the Rubberobo gang, which the game finally reveals is basically synonymous with Dr. Armand, to excavate a gigantic flying fortress. It's just currently not flying. Dr. Armand asks us to go find the Fiyun stone in the conveniently attached ancient ruins in order to get the fortress airborne. Now, this might have been a translation error. The whole game has suffered from non-good English, but Armand also sends a group of rubberobos to look for the Fiyun stone while also hunting us down. Seems like a bad way to get your magical stone found, old man. Once they finally corner us on this suspicious mystical platform, we have to fight 2 goons and a new elite called Gill Girl back to back. And Gill Girl is a tough fight. Her leader, Stone Mirror, is one of the more dangerous strategies that you can build on a female tin pet with devastating destroy attacks, and her support is no slouch either, 2 Gloomegg bombers who act pretty quickly, belying their bulk. We win the fight, but that mystical flooring turns out to be a teleporter that takes us back 10,000 years in time to a retro-futuristic domed city under the ocean called the Kodine Kingdom. And with that, we're completely off the rails. We can consider the Kodine Kingdom to be Chapter 6, and it reeks of filler episode, because our only real goal after coming here is to leave again. We dress in our hero costume before meeting the locals, who believe us to be a prophesied hero sent here to defeat a monster called Blue Hawaii that has been terrorizing their kingdom. They won't send us home until we've handled that problem. We do discover pretty early on that these ancient people do possess the Fiyun stone that we're looking for, but just grabbing that from them would be too easy. We can grab another tin pet though, female again. Though yeah, Medabots still existed 10,000 years ago, at least. The presence of parts factories and the Medabots Corporation in the present day has made them seem like modern technology, but apparently they've been around for a long time. I think in the broader Medabots lore, they may have actually come from space, and those alien Medabots that Dr. Aki uses are like OG models. Get familiar with fighting triads of these utopian bots that the young princess, queen, they call her both, that the queen has. Utopians like to apply confusion to our team, but they're all airborne, so bringing redundant anti-air parts will help a lot in this chapter. We've got to fight and imprison several rubberobos who've traveled back in time with us in our hunt for this Blue Hawaii. But they're not the evil villain for once. The princess's chamberlain candidly fills us in that the princess's own Medabot was causing so much mischief and chaos in the kingdom that he personally threw it in the ocean, whereupon it continued terrorizing the citizens and became mythologized as Blue Hawaii. The bulk of the action in this chapter is a long segment walking on floating boxes in the ocean, sending more rubberobos to jail, and hunting for the mad Medabot, who is of course at the very end of the path, on an island inside another big pink inflatable island? So yeah, the mysterious Blue Hawaii, who is also known as Cafe Olay for some reason, is just another confusion-happy utopian Medabot and its 2 friends. Defeating them reunites the princess with her old Medabot, who promises not to cause mischief this time, and the Utopians work together to confuse the remaining rubberobos into returning to the modern day. We're close behind them, but the queen has been flirting pretty heavily with us. Mind you, we're 10 or 11, but she's like 8. We promise we'll come visit her again, and she gives us a key item to enable that before the ancient people send us home. Just as we discover Dr. Armand in a cutscene, stealing the Fiyun stone amidst the chaos. It seems his motivation for doing all of this is just to make girls interested in him, which, like, I get it, dude, but you're supposed to work on growth for yourself, and the honeys will follow. It's a perspective thing. Wake up in the present, and after catching up on some more Metalink battles that have unlocked, that's Chapter 6 concluded. After a night of sleep, wake up to discover from our parents and Erica's that we've been set up on a date with Erica, except she certainly didn't ask us and we didn't ask her. Turns out the date was a lie. Dr. Armand has used the Fiyun stone to get his fortress airborne, kidnapping Erica just to hurt us? Oh, and Medabots have gone berserk throughout Medaropolis and begun attacking humans. Let's ask Dr. Aki for guidance on how to reach the flying fortress. Aki reveals that he was friends with Armand back in college, and it's Miss Nai who has our solution to reach the fortress. A set of flying vehicle metaparts, a female tin pet for them to go on, since we might have missed all 3 female tin pets by this point, and Wings of the Wind special item to activate flight, and the 4th medal from her collection. Use the wings to fly up to begin Chapter 7 in Fiyun Flying Fortress, a long dungeon as far as this game is concerned. Lots of opponents in this section have flying legs, so anti-air moves will get us very far. Some of Armand's employee Medabots are friendly, and their dialogue hints at something strange. They're all drinking suspicious oil for lunch, becoming addicted to it, and some are behaving strangely after consuming large quantities. We quickly discover why when an alarm sounds and all of the oil eaters attack us. So that's why Medabots were attacking people in the city. We've got to go around the fortress now, defeating all of the berserk Medabots. It's the same fight over and over, so this begins to feel like intentional padding. As we work our way through the maze-like fortress toward the control room, a cutscene reveals more of Armand's intentions. First, he did only kidnap Erica to lure us here to fight us for revenge, even though I'm not really sure why he's mad at us. I mean, we even originally agreed to find the Fiyun stone for him. But this is also the first mention of something called the Limiter that he plans to remove on his Medabots to result in the strongest Medabot ever created. Battle through another large room of identical Medabot fights, but at least they're all a different set than the previous batch, and finally arrive on the bridge where Armand holds Erica hostage. We chastise him for his wickedness, and of course he rushes us into a boss fight against a scary new lead Medabot. This thing is the Robo Emperor, who's rocking an extremely damaging laser move on one arm, which does chain unlike usual optic parts. Heavy-hitting 100% accuracy missiles on the other arm, and his head attack is a weird gravity move that's high-powered and with surprisingly low ROS. Now, I bothered changing up the team and brought some tricky strategy to this fight. I outfitted my lead Medabot with bulk to ensure we wouldn't just get blitzed down. I gave him a left arm that completely nullifies napalm attacks, courtesy of rubberobo grunts throughout the game, and a defensive right arm to make sure the Emperor's napalm attacks would be drawn to him and cancelled out. The Emperor's lasers might still be an issue, but that part is very slow, so we can try to break it off first if he goes for that move. My middle bot spent the fight charging up and spamming a Metaforce that forces the entire opposing team to the beginning of the radiation phase, wasting their time and potentially skipping their attacks. And in third place, my normal time boy buffed the team's speed to start the fight, then spammed Berserk sword attacks, which is a lot safer to do with my defender keeping critical attacks off of him as he returns home. This Berserker plus Defender combo is one that I expect Rokusho version players to benefit from a lot more their whole game long, because they get access to it early on and their melee attacks are just better, so it's worth protecting them. Of course, as a Chad bomb enjoyer, I had to make sure we claimed Robo Emperor's napalm arm as our prize. And that's not the only boss fight. Armand follows up by disabling the limiter on one of his Medabots who had been friendly to us so far, turning it mad and forcing us to fight a former friend. This fight can be tough because he's running 2 of these chicken things with destroy attacks, but it can also be over quickly with some luck because the whole enemy team is susceptible to anti-air attacks. Then, with a threat that he's just getting started, Armand backs out of the room, leaving us to reunite with Erica and enjoy a moment of peace. Then we pursue Dr. Armand downstairs. He's going by a new name now, by the way, Dr. Meta Evil, and we have the privilege of fighting him a second time to score another Robo Emperor part. I kept my defensive bot in lead position from last time, but I stuck the Emperor's own napalm arm on my middle bot, plus the fastest legs that I had, and came out swinging, quickly eliminating both support bots and the Emperor himself soon after. Unfortunately, fighting in front of the Fiyun stone has destabilized the ship, and it's going to crash. We have an important decision to make on how to handle that fact. We can either stabilize the ship to buy it a longer coasting time, or leave that to Koji and go chase down Dr. Meta Evil. Each option awards a unique medal, but we can get a third Robo Emperor part by chasing the Doctor, so of course I went with that, picking up his laser arm called Death Beam. Even with stabilization from Koji though, the fortress is still headed for the ground, but we rally all of the sane flying Medabots we can find, and collectively they help the fortress stay airborne just long enough to avoid crashing down on Riverview City, instead falling in the field just south. Back on the ground, the Select Corps take Dr. Medieval into custody. Our friends are all here to celebrate our heroism, and we get to go home and take some well-earned sleep after a very busy Chapter 7. But that's not the end of the game. It would have been such a good conclusion. We wake up to discover all of the kids have gone missing from town, having received, again, an invitation/threat from a rubberobo elite named Shrimp Lips to come to Medabot Island. Sure, I guess. Visit Dr. Aki first, though, and then Miss Nai for the last free set of Metaparts that she'll offer us, plus a 5th medal from her collection. We learn that the final ferry to Medabot Island has already left while we slept, and our Wings of the Wind doesn't know how to fly there for some reason, so we have to revisit our well-wishing researcher friend at Medabots Corporation for a set of periscope parts, which is essentially our surf HM. With that, we could actually revisit Mount Odoro right now and surf our way back to Canny, and she would let us grab the box we didn't take earlier as our 9th and final tin pet. So it turns out there are actually 10 total chances to get a tin pet, and missing one of them is not the end of the world. But I would prefer my final bot to be male for balance reasons, so I did reload my game after confirming this. Let's surf to Medabot Island again and visit Witch's Castle for a 3rd time to save the abducted kids. And Hachiro, who wasn't actually kidnapped, but just felt like he should have been because he's rich and he begged to be included. Bust those kids free, which requires battles with the castle host Milky and the Dark Master, and it turns out the rubberobos, and therefore Dr. Medaevil's hideout, was just downstairs in the witch's castle the whole time. It does explain why so much plot has centered here. The rubberobo hideout is another pretty long dungeon with many fights against the various rubberobo elites we've encountered throughout the game. The Screws show up too, but this time as allies instead of detractors, and they help us break through some of the security doors. We also run into Koji and Karen, who help us take care of a particularly evasive sea slug before Shrimp Lips sends wave after wave of thugs at us until we finally bust his machinery. And after that, Thrilling is a box containing our final male tin pet to complete the team. Catch up to Sea Slug, who's threatening to drop Erica's medal into a pool of acid when the Phantom Renegade shows up and knocks him straight in. Oops. It's okay though, apparently Sea Slug only meant carbonic acid, and it's just a pool of harmless sparkling water. We defeat him, then swim around the pool to recover Erica's medal, as well as a hidden new dragon medal for us. This is the medal compatible with those teamwork attacks from the Ant Medabots, which I have been using sometimes, so it's good to finally have the compliant medal. Only one room further is the finale of our game. Notice the weird Medabot idling in a tube of green water. The researcher in front of that is actually our well-wisher from the Medabots Corporation. It turns out he mostly just wants to take on cutting-edge research, and he finds there's less red tape working for the bad guys. He hands us a part and wishes us luck in the coming confrontation. That confrontation is with Dr. Medieval, of course, whom I guess broke out of prison or was never put there. He's got his ultimate creation ready, the Mega Emperor Medabot. Dr. Medieval has learned how to disable the limiter on metals, which unlocks the full power of a Medabot, but it also frees it from the chains of human command. He orders the Mega Emperor to attack, and it does assault the Phantom Renegade and Lady, but only because it wanted to. The limitless Mega Emperor is too strong, even for the Phantom Renegade, who finally unmasks as Henry, to nobody's surprise but our own. Mega Emperor then turns on Dr. Medieval, who realizes he may have made a mistake, before turning on us. The Phantom Lady wants to intervene, but Henry prevents her, revealing that he and Dr. Aki have indeed been monitoring us and grooming us as some sort of hero, since they see in us the potential to, quote, define a future for Medabots and humans alike? Whatever that means. Honestly, sounds like some Mass Effect hybridization thing. Anyway, let's fight this monster. The battle is 3 copies of the Mega Emperor, who all unfairly start with a full Metaforce gauge. Left unchecked, 2 of them will use Metaforces on turn 1 that can devastate your team, even taking out a whole bot if they get lucky. You can actually run a Force Bind ability to counter this, but I snuck a victory through more conventional means. In my first slot, my bulky boy used death lasers from the regular Emperor's left arm. My time bot in 3rd place first buffed my leader with a speed buff, then proceeded to also shower him with instant charges to get as many lasers fired as possible. My middle bot ran interference with an attack that kept one opponent frozen and also opened it up to critical hits. If you can survive their opening salvo and sneak through some big hits, the Mega Emperors die just as easy as any other opponent. Except not quite. They are limitless, so we've got to beat them a 2nd time in a row just to make sure our victory wasn't a fluke. This time, I did run a devious team that's more intentionally designed to counter the Mega Emperor. My first bot had immunity to napalm and also ran counterattack parts to serve back their strong attacks. My 3rd bot had ant parts, setting up and executing his own teamwork attacks. And in the middle, the bot with Force Bind, which I sped out on turn 1, which disables Metaforce for all 6 Medabots in the battle. That means it effectively wastes the first turn of 2 of the enemies. From then on, she ran Berserk Destroy attacks, which was fortunate enough to catch the enemy leader in radiation and damage it all the way to victory. We don't get parts from beating the Mega Emperor, by the way, which is very sad. Saved by us from his creation, but defeated and humiliated, Dr. Medieval starts the self-destruct sequence for the base. We run up to warn the scientists, and notice our ally has stepped away from the incubation tube to watch our fight, exposing that tube to us. Interact with it for an optional super fight. This really weird angelic alien baby is called Babby Blue, and it's rolling with a Mega Emperor as backup, plus a normal but super defensive Armor Paradine. Weirdly, Babby Blue initiates the fight with Force Bind of his own, ruining Mega Emperor's first turn for us. From there on out, he'll either speed buff his allies or confuse our team. I sent in my bulky napalm spamming leader, set shot traps with my second bot to wear down the opposing Emperor in a way that didn't mind being confused, and got pretty aggressive with Berserk strikes from my third bot rather than normally bothering with his time buffs. Once I chewed through Armor Paradine and got Mega Emperor to take himself out on my shot traps, I had enough breathing room to whittle down Babby Blue even through his status effects and good evasion. Then, with all the exciting action behind us, Medabots does not kindly warp us out of the dungeon. We still have to physically walk all the way out, fighting or spending a rubberobo medal to skip tons of random encounters from other metafighters who apparently aren't worried about the self-destruct countdown. This tedious exit sequence does take some of the wind out of my sails from the climactic victory. I think the game should have just warped us. Once we finally make it out, leaving behind the Dark Master, who can't be convinced that it's a bad time to take a nap, we realize with worry that we can't locate Koji, Henry, or Carrara, and with the place rigged to explode any second, it's just firecrackers. This game is way too wholesome for a big explosion. Dr. Aki and Miss Nai show up to chastise Dr. Medieval as he's led away by the Select Corps, revealing that he's always had a grudge against Aki since their college days. We escort Erica and Karen home and learn that the Phantom Lady and our researcher friend are fine too. Henry only suffered a scratch from the Mega Emperor's attack, and he'll be fine. There's even closure and comeuppance for the Select Corps captain, who had been taking credit for our hard work all game long. With our whole friend group behind us, screaming for us to stick up for ourselves, we finally vocalize our concerns, and it turns out the rest of the Select Corps are also fed up with their captain's abuses and lack of ethics, so they collectively overthrow him. All is well, and it looks like our Erica romance has gone correctly. Back on the mainland, she starts to make a move, because, of course, she would be the one to do so between her and us, but the screws interrupt at just the wrong moment to tease us. Taking their teases as a challenge, Erica just goes for it anyway. And that is Medabots GBA. At least, the main game. There's an elaborate post-game called the Partsoon Rally, which sends us on a scavenger hunt around the world to collect 12 rare meta parts, including a full set of Mega Emperor parts. But there's not much plot there, and it is a fun event to play through yourself, so I'll leave the Partsoon Rally playing as B-roll while we discuss the game. Medabots Game Boy Advance is extremely fun to play, and I'm gonna have a hard time not following this up with a 30-hour Rokusho version run just for fun, so I can focus on making other videos. The ability to customize all 4 parts on all of your tin pets, and then even choose the 3 tin pets you fight with on a per battle basis, just activates my brain so good. It feels like playing with Bionicles and sticking Kopaka's icy shield into the hands of the fiery Tahu. But the game is far from perfect. There are some reasons besides marketing and timing that the game is not well remembered today. With several hundred parts in the game, they can't all be winners. They could have let us have a little more fun with the parts offered. Quite a few of them feel like strict upgrades to others, especially in the shoot and strike domains, meaning there's essentially a lot of wasted parts. It's a shame to have a lot of useless parts like that when there are other strategies that only got 2 or even 1 parts that support them, like confusion or counterattacks. And, well, I do understand why that is. Battles simply reward proactive strategies innately due to how breaking parts and winning battles works. Come out swinging and break your opponent's arms first, and it doesn't matter if they were planning on setting up a cool action cancellation loop against you when you've ruined their whole turn and gotten yourself closer to winning the battle. I think if the game was going to support gimmicky strategies better, it would require a fundamental rebalancing that made it harder to one-shot parts off the opponent. That, or find more ways to let clever strategies advance the battle state, like factoring in statuses you've afflicted or damage you've prevented when judging the winner of a fight. The mix of outside of battle team prep and inside of battle reactive strategic decision making is a delight though, and the little sprinkling of RNG in which bots you can target and who makes it to the center first keep the battles from becoming too predictable. These games did handle version dimorphism extremely well, with not only different available parts and medals, but different starting parts and medals that make each version play out very differently. I can tell you, Rokusho version is definitely harder because you won't be able to land hits on some opponents, even toward the start of the game, so you'll have to find ways to raise your own accuracy or other ways to get around evasive opponents. More negatives though, the plot and the writing do kind of stink. One thing Pokemon did much better was center its whole world around the Pokemon League challenge. Players innately have a reason to be raising and battling Pokemon, and a reason for going on a journey that takes them around the world, which works really well as a video game. Medabots, by contrast, is more grounded in a real functioning society where metafights are a pastime for children, but there are still schools, police stations, normal adults with jobs. They had to layer reasons for us to travel and do battles on top of the world they created, which leads to a scattered episodic plot with lots of retreaded ground. And related to that scattered plot, I conveyed the events of the game in a smooth sequence for this video, but there is so much needless ping-ponging that I'm upset with personally, not because it draws out the plot too much, because it's straight up confusing. When we first visit Rosewood Academy, for example, the game does not allow us to just go there. It's something like we have to talk to our parents, then Dr. Aki, then enter the meta shop, then try to go to Karen's house and get denied, so we go to Koji's house, and then we're allowed to enter Rosewood. It's frustrating because the game does often have a specific place it needs you to visit to trigger the next event, but it's not always clear what that expectation is. There's a lot of time wasted just figuring out what the game wants you to do. I touched on this before, but it's easy to build a team early on that can carry you through the rest of the game in a way that makes it uninteresting. Getting some key strong parts early, like Sumilidon's shot traps and King Pharaoh's napalm, encourages you to just spam those parts all game. They did have a tough time here making boss fights difficult enough without making them impossible, thanks to the ability to just blow through most problems with a handful of strong parts. I would have preferred to see a couple more reasons to have to change your team around, because battles do get a little repetitive if you rest on your laurels with the same parts all game long. Like I said, anytime you saw me doing something that was not blowing through enemies with huge laser attacks, that was just me having fun experimenting and not something that I had to do. I'm also going to fault the music lightly as well. What there is good, but there are only a handful of tracks total, and they're on really short loops, so you do get sick of the music pretty fast. But one positive I haven't mentioned yet is the color palette, which I'll call in brief Easter basket. This game is full of pink, turquoise, and darker yellows in the UI, and in many of the Medabots as well. It's a small design choice to commit to a color palette like this, but it adds a ton of identity to your game, and this one makes me feel warm and vibrant while I play. I love it. As I mentioned, there's like 19 other Medabots games, all but 2 of which are in Japanese, so maybe there is a Medabots game out there that has a solid plot and a strong journey. But most of what this game brings to the table is its strong battle system shining amidst the jank. Calling the plot of Pokemon games good is also a stretch, to be fair, so I think it's unfair that this series was abandoned-ish after getting only 1 game in English, but the solitary Game Boy Advance Medabots game is still so much fun on its own 22 years later. Quick cut back to the game, by the way. After winning the Partsoon Rally, Erica tells us that she's waiting for us in our special place.
In my restless dreams, I see that town.
Nah, but she just means the ferry port where she kissed us earlier. Because we avoided Karen all game and bought Erica that camera lens, we've successfully completed the Erica romance path. And after laughing together like maniacs, Erica discovers a cat medal in the sand and gives it to us as our prize. There's also one final medal, the Devil, if we grab the fiyun stone out of the grounded fortress now and return it to the Kodine Kingdom. Trade those to yourself on a new save if you want a reason to ever use them, I guess. Thank you for enjoying Medabots with me. If you made it to the end of this video, you've already done me a huge kindness with your watch time, but if you feel like going the extra mile, a like and a comment is very helpful to me and the channel. Thanks as well to my patrons. I love you all, especially with some weirdly low view counts recently as YouTube tries to figure out whether my content is any good. Your support really means the world to me. Thank you. I think that a Nuzlocke run of this game would be hugely fun if we could figure out some balanced rules around it. I'd love to see someone else run that, and I'd also love to cover Rokusho version differences, but that is a topic that probably didn't have much interest after 2003. I actually have a resolution for 2025 to try and cover more games that people have actually heard of, so look forward to something that is not more Medabots coming next. Holidays were slow due to travel, but I won't keep you waiting on the next video until Kingdom Come. I'll see you again soon. Until then, peace out, Girl Scout.